So this is Sunday Assembly Manchester, and we are a secular community that celebrates life. We've been celebrating life from home for a while now. We have three main phrases that come with Sunday Assembly: to live better, to help often, and to wonder more. So we celebrate life by having an assembly. It used to be once a month, now it's every week, celebrating that we're here singing songs and learning from some of the most amazing poets and speakers that we've had over the many weeks. And we've covered so much. We've had comedians, we've had actors, we've talked about history and charity and different causes. We've talked about science, we've talked about art, you name it, music and sites around Manchester, politics, you name it, it's all been here at Sunday Assembly Manchester. So you can tell from my background that today we're doing one of our slightly more sciencey ones, which are always brilliant. Now, my name is Louise Crooms, just to introduce myself to you. And yesterday I went to the zoo, which was so weird, because I know a lot of the other countries have been talking to me and saying that they are closing down. And we here in Manchester and around the UK are opening out. So you notice the hair's been done. People were skipping out of the hairdressers. You've never seen anything like it. People were throwing the doors open, going down the street like this. I saw lots of pictures online of people having, men in particular, who had big hair and a beard and looking all, and then doing before and after shots of everyone getting nice and trim. So I'm sorry if you've not been able to go yet, but it's making them so happy. You know about being grateful, having gratitude. People had gratitude for having a hairdresser like that. So that was great. But yesterday I also went to the zoo, which was a really strange thing to do. And the zoo has been closed for, I mean, at least 4 months, quite a long, significant amount of time. And you might know that Chester Zoo was sort of doing really well during lockdown, having Chester Zoo online. And they would go to different sections at different times and show you feeding the animals. The zookeepers did a fantastic job of that, so it was so amazing. But if you'd have told me in that zoo that it was August, I would have believed you. It was so hot and so unbelievably beautiful. And it was lovely and everything. But you know when it's unseasonably hot and you start to think of that thing that we're all collectively trying to not think about, which is our planet. And it's just that little hint of that warmth. And then looking at the animals themselves, finding out that certain species have lost 85% over the past 40 years of their species. And you see that at the zoo. And it's just awful to think about. So these little hints come through. And when you think of David Attenborough and his very calm voice, when even his voice is getting, very urgent, you really know there's something going on. So today we are going to talk about renewable energy, and we're going to talk about, because I think that thing is in our mind, the power of the sun, the power of wind, the power of other things that we can use. And we've got a great speaker for us today that's hopefully is going to make us more knowledgeable on the subjects. And my inspiration for my backdrop is our little blue planet, which I can't even see it. I think it's just under here. Does anyone know where it is? There it is. Is that it? The picture taken, I'm assuming this is Saturn. Look, I know loads about science, obviously, of the planet and how small and fragile we are as a nation, and how we're in Manchester, you guys may be somewhere else. There's no link between we feel far away, but actually we are all connected in our planet. Our planet's only tiny, a tiny blue marble in the solar system. So it's very, very tiny. So that's what we're going to be learning about today. And we have got an amazing poet for you to share with you. A guy so full of energy. And what's so funny about this poet is that he once did a poetry session at the first birthday of Manchester Central Library when it had reopened. And he was stood in the middle of the stage, and my son went right up to him and watched the entire set like this. And Dominic continued and didn't ban out. I've got a photograph. I'll share it with Dominic maybe later. A photograph of him doing his poetry and having my son within about a foot, annoying him. But he's such a professional. So ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Dominic Berry. We love him.
What a lovely, lovely introduction. Can you hear me all right, yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'm handing over to you right now. Go wild, everybody.
Fantastic. Okay, so yeah, I am a poet. I'm going to share some poetry with you. Hope you get something from it. The first one is arguably a bit of a sad poem, but I'll try and say it in an upbeat way. It's a kind of opposite of Here Comes the Sun. For most of lockdown, I've been living on my own. So things like this, like online sessions, have been amazing for me. How lucky are we that we have Zoom? How lucky. I've been to a lot of poetry events, fitness events, and online video gaming. There's a great community there that's been really wonderful for me. So I'm going to share a poem about Minecraft. If you don't know what Minecraft is, it's a little bit like Lego, you know, the Lego plastic bricks that you can build stuff with. Minecraft's exactly the same, but instead of having real plastic bricks, they're on the screen, they're in the game, so virtual plastic bricks. It's a poem from me and it goes exactly like this. I want to love you, but not in this world. Want our lives to untangle and plans to unfurl away from a space where normality is hurled in our faces. We're told our place. I know I'm too weird for this world. I need Minecraft to build our own thrills and fulfill what we might have if we're just allowed to be proud when we find dark delights in the sprites we embrace. You can laugh at my pixeled eyes or my square feet. Open this chest, take my heart if you'll meet on the map I made for you. It's only complete when you're here. I think you're ace. I think you're ace. You are the greatest. Don't turn off my game. Don't put my life on stasis. These mountains and caves I've made are the basis of somewhere for you to see me. If you see me, I will build your dreams. Make a forest of cake full of fizzy pop streams. Have my last potion. You know what that means. I'm whoever you want me to be. I'll find the best armor, protect you from trouble, dig for the gold if you'll hand me the shovel. Look, I can be Alex if you hate Steve Stubble. Whatever you want, I'll agree. If you don't leave. I know I am strange, but whatever you don't like about me, I'll change. In this brick world of Minecraft, I will rearrange anything you don't like, so you'll stay. I will build a new face if you'll stay in my game. I will build a new world if you say my map's lame. Look, whatever you like, I'll just like the same. Give the command, I'll obey. Because my love keeps shining like diamonds of blue. In a world full of lies, will my made up one do? Let's invent a reality and then make it come true. Will you promise that you won't go away? That's my first poem. Cheers for listening. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very, very much. So, yeah, I do poetry as my job. I love doing it. This is a book of poems that I had come out forever ago. This is my second book of poems. I'm going to read something that's about another activity I've done a lot of in lockdown, walking. I love walking through cities. I love walking through the countryside. If you're doing about renewable energy, what a fantastic activity that is to go for a stroll. It burns calories. Like if you go for a walk for a couple of hours, even solely. I went through a phase where I was really overweight and I wanted to lose weight, and I lost it just through walking, no other exercise. This is about walking to the beach, thinking I was on the beach on my own, and I was not on my own. Someone else was there. This is called We Swim Together. I walk here, my bare skin hugged by hot summer sun. Sky is more relaxed here. No jostling against tower blocks with no idea of personal space, polluting mornings with their monstrously polite words, colossal resentments covered by appropriate workwear. Don't wear clothes here. Naked feet pad from grass to the pebble beach. Naked eyes greet sea. You see. A large round face stares back, a face that would suit a monocle. It is a seal. Never knew seals were so massive. Never knew seals so suited monocles. He watches, silent chuckling, as I inch my fumbly way from blazing land into chilling water. Never knew what the arched bits of my feet were for. Underwater, iced toes clench as sharp stones slice soft arches. If I wore shoesless, my feet might be tougher. I might be tougher. Deeper, deeper, take forever. Seal still watching. His quiet face communicates 100 gentle words, too gentle for voice, letting me know what is what. I am his guest and want to impress, but I know nothing about sea. Feel really naked. Seal doesn't care. We swim together, and I never knew, not knowing mattered so little. Swim together, take forever, and sea feels warmer than land. Cheers for listening. Hey, I've not said that poem for ages. Right, I'm going to say 2 more poems. The next one's also from this book, and it's also about the sea, and it goes like this. Into the sea, worries like earth off cliffs, crumbling to ocean. Worries erode, then salt winds hook nostrils and tug. Excited feet quicken across smooth pebbles and splash. Sharp waves, cupped hands break surface. Full breath, head under. Gulls scream smothered as ears flood, fill, eyes sting, thrill, thighs seaweed slap. I dive, breath and body release beneath air, beneath time. It is not Monday here. Monday means nothing. It's beneath my normal life where I am anchored to the dry. I can swim without names. Full breath, head under. Right, 1 more poem from me. Cheers for listening. I do enjoy saying poems. This is Ace. I'm going to share a link to my publisher at the end. This is not in any of my books. This is a book that's come out about life in coronavirus, us versus virus. And they accepted the newest thing which I have written, and it is about, I forgot I'd written this, it is about, I dated someone and moved in with them at the start of lockdown, and they were living with a housemate who worked selling energy to people, so he would cold call people, and I overheard a phone call that he was doing, and I imagined that I was the person on the other end of the phone call, because me and this housemate had a chat about this. And yeah, it was an evocative experience. So where is the poem hiding? Where is it? It's called Warmth, and this is very much about being in lockdown. It's my final poem. Cheers for listening. It goes like this. Icy silence fills this window. The usual laughs of children playing and families chattering outside has withdrawn from my world. Don't think about bills. Don't turn up my radiator. Fetch the blue jumper Grandad knitted before his 90th and imagine what he'd have made of this lockdown malarkey. Unexpectedly, my phone's ring splits the quiet and I realise I have not spoken one word all day. Hello? Is a cold call salesperson, a stranger breaking into my evening and releasing sounds from my mouth I hadn't realised I had trapped. I don't want to buy anything, except I would please like a friendly chat. a wood like that. And although I know telesales protocol does not encourage sparkling camaraderie between trader and would-be customer, for a few seconds, this uninvited humanity fills me with warmth. I've been Dominic Berry. Cheers so much for listening. Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dominic Berry, so full of energy, which that does not diminish with Zoom. He's like he's communicating directly into your house, and even his mug is exciting. Dominic's going to put down into the chat box where you can get his work from. Thank you so much, Dominic. You've cheered.
Oh, you're welcome. Cheers.
Go wild for Dominic Berry, our poet for today. How brilliant is he? And as I said, a child can be within several feet of him looking at him and he'll just carry on doing it. It's so brilliant. So today is, we're talking about renewable energy, and we have someone to talk to us about this. We would love it if you have any questions which you might have from this. I mean, I had difficulty just a moment ago remembering Saturn. Remembering Saturn, do you know what I mean? So we might need help with the science and the nature of this massive topic that we're doing. But we have got a lovely person with us who's going to help us make sense. Dominic's details have just been put in the chat box. Who's going to help us make sense of the complexities of using renewable energy. And he is, I'm going to just find him for you now so I can pop him on. I'm going to give him a big build up and get him ready to say hello. This is Alex Hulley. Here he is. Here's Alex, our speaker for today, who's a project engineer at a nuclear power station. And he's also, I'm going to call him a low carbon enthusiast, which is getting more and more. People are getting more and more on board. Obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning of the assembly, there is more of a concern about how we are in our environment and what we're going to do in the future. And I think it was even possibly this morning or even yesterday where China and the US have just declared that they're going to collaborate together. So things are happening all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Alex. And remember, if you've got any questions, you can put them in the chat box at the end. Alex Hulley is our speaker for today.
Thank you very much, everyone. Lovely to be here. And I hope I can capitalise on that energy that Dominic's injected into the room and build on it, and hopefully not bore you with too many figures and graphics and so on. Is that visible on the screen, Louise?
Yep.
It is, yes, thank you.
Great stuff. So, yeah, my name's Alex Hulley. I'm a project engineer currently working in the low carbon energy sector. So, yeah, I'm going to share with you today some thoughts on renewables and low carbon energy, with a brief stop on the way to look at decarbonising transportation. So there are quite a few graphics and figures and data in this, but don't worry about getting your head around it. I'm more interested in the general concepts and getting you interested, and feel free to store up your questions and throw them at me afterwards, and I'll do my best to answer them. So just a bit about my history. So I studied general engineering at Durham University. I went on to work for EDF Energy at HM2 power station for 4 or 5 years. Ironically, looking after big diesel generators, which supports nuclear power, but yeah, it didn't sit right with me entirely. But I've since worked in energy from waste, Stopford Energy Environment, R&D, and I'm now back at the power station for my sins as a project engineer. But in amongst all of that, I really enjoy talking about low carbon transportation and renewables. I got my first electric car 3 years ago, and I've loved having it every second. I've played around with my house, put solar panels on the last house, had my own battery store. So, and I'm also a director of Charge My Street, which is a community benefit society focused on providing access to infrastructure for charging cars to those that wouldn't normally have it, such as those in flats or rented accommodation and all this sort of thing. So, yeah, before delving into renewables, I just first like to take a look at energy itself and where does it all come from? And the answer really is the sun. The vast majority of the energy we experience on Earth has come from the sun in some format, or even from other stars. All the materials around us gathered together into one big lump of rock. So the sun, here's some stats for you. The sun every second is fusing 600 million tons of hydrogen into heavier elements. So the average, or the average sort of power that's released from the sun every second is this number here, 3.846 times 10 to the 26, which, if you can't visualize, is 3846 with that many zeros after it. So absolutely staggering machine is our sun. So that's Tsar Bomba was the biggest nuclear bomb ever detonated, and there's 1.8 billion of those going off every second from our sun. And we receive a tiny fraction of this. So we receive only 90,000 terawatts, which is 10 to the 12, I think. So we receive that amount of energy all the time. And that drives life on Earth. So it's absorbed by the Earth's surface, its atmosphere. It drives our weather systems. It's converted by plants into chemical energy, which is then passed on to animals and onto humans, possibly via animals, depending on your preferences. So yeah, the thoughts that we're having now are effectively powered by this process in some way. The neurons firing in our brains, but it drives the weather systems and provides all this useful energy that we can tap into. Even fossil fuels, which we'll touch upon, they originally got their energy from the sun, from plants and creatures that got fossilized over time and got compacted, and we're now exploiting. So yeah, over time, since we first gathered round the fire as early men, we've found increasingly creative ways to improve the quality of our lives through warmth, through growing crops. We use windmills to grind grain into flour, and then we started to look into, I've got a picture of a train there. We started to get into the Industrial Revolution. And yeah, all the way up to space exploration. So we're using some of the energy that's coming from the sun to power things to go back out into space, which is just absolutely blows my mind, really. And this creativity, this creates a dependence for humans on energy, which is growing and growing and shows no signs of slowing down worldwide. So this shows the last 50 years or so our annual energy consumption in terawatt hours, and as the population grows and the expectations for high quality of life also increases, energy access increases. This is just projected to keep on going. So just coming back to renewable energy then. So what is it? There's a definition on the screen for you there, but simply it's energy that can be replenished in our lifetime. So all that energy from the sun is coming in, and we have the opportunity to exploit it in all of these different forms. So solar energy can directly impact on solar PV, generate electricity to power our homes. It can be used to generate hot water and heating in a similar sort of fashion. Geothermal energy is energy stored in the earth, which we can tap into for heating and power. Wind turbines or windmills, not to be confused. We use biomass, and we use hydropower in various forms, which is driven by the weather systems, all the rain going up, all the water going up to clouds, falling somewhere else, and that potential energy then washing downstream. So why does it matter? And we've obviously already touched on some of this. Oh, sorry, actually, I've got another few slides of pictures in the real world. So a solar farm on the left, wind turbines on the right, a large hydroelectric dam, and then I believe this is a tidal barrage in South Korea under construction. So why does it matter? And yes, we touched upon climate change. So we're all quite familiar with the effects that elevate levels of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases has in our atmosphere has. And the last few decades have seen a rapid depletion of Arctic ice, increased forest fires, particularly in the last few years. It's been on the news, Australia, the USA. We're getting more frequent and more severe tropical storms. So the Earth is sending us all these warning signs that something's out of kilter, and we should really be listening to that and trying to change how we operate fundamentally. We've also got issues such as deforestation, mining, which destroys ecosystems and threatens the biodiversity, which ultimately props us up, as well as all this energy. There's the massive food chain that powers, and if we interfere with it, then it interferes with us. So the current energy market, or the current energy demand, so I've got a chart here which looks at primary energy consumption by source. So this is all energy, not just electricity. And as you can see, whilst we've been growing our renewables and low carbon fraction, we still have this massive problem to overcome. You can see gas, oil, coal, and biomass on the right there, taking up more than 3/4 of the energy that we use on an annual basis. And we can compare electricity to energy with, for instance, this bar chart. So in terms of electricity, we're actually getting better and better at using renewables to our benefit, but we've still got this massive energy budget that we need to start to move away from fossil fuels as very carbon intensive sources. So we are making progress, and you can see that quite noticeably with the United Kingdom. The graph on the left is electricity, so more than half of our, the graph on the right, I should say, more than half of our electricity comes from low carbon and renewable sources now, but we're still very dependent on gas and oil. So oil largely for industry and transport, gas for our heating. I have a gas boiler. It's cheap and it's economic and affordable for most people, but does carry this this carbon footprint. And just for context, a bit of a blurry figure. These figures show the carbon intensity of electricity generation by source. So hydro on the left, all the way through nuclear, which is a controversial one we can talk about in a minute. But you can see that the intensity of gas, oil, and coal is just so far apart from all of the other low carbon sources. So, is there a silver bullet? So, in light of this huge global challenge, we have to ask ourselves: can one technology fix everything? And the answer is probably not really. It's unlikely in the short term, very difficult in the short term. Longer term, there's better prospects, but we need that low carbon energy mix to drive our immediate and long term future. So a bit about nuclear. Nuclear, whilst generally more expensive than modern renewable energy generators, and it does have issues associated with it, such as long lasting waste materials. It's extremely power dense. So I've pictured Heysham site on the left, top left. Those generators between them produce something of the order of, let me get this right, nearly 3 gigawatts, 2.5 gigawatts of power. A large wind turbine offshore, the largest ones are now getting into the hundreds of megawatts. So sort of several orders of magnitude lower per square foot. So there's a lot of energy we can get out of uranium from fission, but we do have these byproducts which, in fairness, are generally quite well managed. We understand the risks associated with them quite well, and what we're comparing that with is the millions of deaths every year attributable to air pollution from combustion of coal, oil, and gas. See a picture of a street in Beijing a few years ago there. So nuclear has had a bit of a bumpy history with accidents along the way. I'd have to point you to some stats on that in terms of comparing deaths from air pollution and nuclear waste, but I can come back to that later. But I'll say, because it's so energy dense, it can produce a lot of electricity for very little fuel. So personally, I see nuclear as a stopgap for the next century, nuclear fission at least, as progress is made in expanding renewables, because renewable energy costs are constantly coming down. So the cost of storage, which help to deal with intermittency. So as the sun comes up in the day, we get a curve of energy, electricity being generated. We can't use that in the evening as a classic example. So we need ways to store that, whether it's batteries, whether it's pump storage, whether it's liquefying air and expanding it through a turbine to generate electricity. There's all sorts of innovations going on in that sector. And the energy grid is also, electricity grid is also changing and evolving to accommodate the new ways of operating and thinking. We'll see that in low carbon transport. And a big technology of mine that I love is the idea of nuclear fusion on Earth. So the sun is powered by fusion, and we can harness that on Earth. And if we can manage that, we have limitless or near limitless amounts of energy we can take from water to produce this power with very little waste out as well. So I've stolen this picture from a video that Phil Wiles kindly sent to me. So thanks, Phil. And this is kind of the summary of the short-term view. We see all the renewables working together with nuclear, essentially, to fight this mammoth problem we have, which is our dependence on fossil fuels. And I'll share a link to the video later on with that. So I think I've got time to quickly talk about decarbonising transport. So whilst there's a number of industrial sectors to decarbonise, transportation is something we all pretty much depend on. I've created myself a 45-minute commute with this latest job, so I'm not the best example of what I'm going to come on to talk about, but we can picture this city of the future as one where all of our needs are met locally. We can transport ourselves by walking, by cycling, by being within the same sort of building that we're in. So I think we're a number of years away from this city of the future. So what we need to do now in the short term is, I'll come back to that. What we need to do in the short term is really prioritise sustainable transport. So more walking, cycling, public transport, and then we get down to private vehicles on the bottom left. So we can broadly split transport into personal and transport of goods, and each sector has its own set of unique challenges. So battery electric vehicles are currently quite feasible and are getting better all the time. But for instance, planes on the right there really struggle with batteries being so heavy. Weight is a huge issue for planes, so we're looking to biofuels. And there are some battery powered planes under development. I'll just go back a slide. So I include this here just for interest, and we can see our annual use of oil in the UK, and we can see this massive dip, which was obviously due to the pandemic and the halting of life as we know it. So this is not a very pleasant example, but it's example of how we can reinvent the way that we work and live, albeit this was forced upon us. And it's not a solution, but it does show the impact of how we can alter our thinking to affect change. So yes, electric cars, I think they're part of the answer, certainly only part of the answer. They do have lower emissions over their lifespan, even when using dirty power grids for manufacturing and driving. Example on the right is, I believe, batteries manufactured in China and driving in Poland, which still relies heavily on coal. Because essentially we are using the energy in a much more efficient way. We're burning it in specific power plants which have a much higher efficiency than throwing it into your car and getting 35% efficiency out of it. And this situation for electric cars gets better and better all the time as renewables expand into the grids, as low carbon energy sources develop. It's getting better and better. So whereas engines always have sort of maximum theoretical efficiency that we can't really improve on. And I will say that producing fuel costs us electricity. So there's a lot of energy that we expend in digging up oil, coal and gas, refining it, transporting it, distributing it. So if we reduce our dependence on that, we effectively unlock extra capacity for the grids, and that's what's shown in this top left picture here. I often hear the line, electric vehicles will melt the grid when I plug it in after work. Everyone's plugging in, charging at the same time. but it's simply not true. It does present a challenge, but the national grid are quite comfortable they can overcome that. That's partly due to that issue with the upstream processing of the fuel, but also on the bottom right here, this shows projections of energy demand for charging electric vehicles under different scenarios. So what if I plug my car in when I get home, and rather than charging, it waits until everyone's gone to bed, then charges my car up overnight, and it's ready for me to use in the morning? Or better yet, what if I plug it in and it can discharge power back to the grid, so it can use some of its spare energy to power me using the oven to make my tea, and then charge back up overnight. So there's all sorts of creative solutions that we can use at a domestic scale, leading to a happier grid. So yeah, this is one of my last slide, I think. So a big problem with electric cars at the minute is infrastructure, and it's a big issue, but infrastructure is coming. So top left, top right are two examples of the installations with Charge My Street, which do get used. Well, the one on the top left gets used quite regularly. Top right was a few days ago. You install the vehicle to grid charger shown in the center at the top. That's what I had on my house, and I trialed that with my car, and we made a decent amount of money from selling our electricity at peak times and charging the car back up at off-peak times. Bottom left is GridServe, which is a company that has installed lots of solar, lots of battery storage, and has created an electric forecourt. So really advanced tech, rapid chargers. So you can plug your car in, and some of them can be, a couple of 100 miles in 20 minutes now. And then bottom right, a bit more close to my home in the northwest, that's junction 34 of the M6, and that's recently had a few rapid chargers put in, a few slower chargers for people using the park and ride to get into the city. So all of this is developing. It's all very exciting. There are challenges, but if you're interested, there's loads of data out there, loads of accessible information, and I'll say the infrastructure will come. So that's quite a lot of information to get through in 15 minutes.
Yes,
but
we've already got some very intelligent questions, Alex. So if we just pull down the slides, and I will reappear as if by magic by your side, as I can find myself. Obviously a very intelligent audience, because we've already got some smart questions coming in. So we'll start with our first question. Phil would like to know, does the UK energy mix include imported electricity that you mentioned earlier?
Oh, good question. I'm not sure about that in terms of reporting. I think it is, but I don't know if it's reported against in terms of carbon intensity, to be honest.
Judith would like to know why we don't use more wind and tidal and hydropower.
So wind's had a bit of a bumpy history in the UK in terms of
history.
yeah. The government wasn't particularly fond of wind onshore, which was typically seen as the most sort of affordable solution for wind. That's changing now, and I believe onshore wind is getting more attention. But as a country, we're quite blessed with our coastline and our access to wind resource. So there is a lot of expansion into offshore wind, lots of innovations in that. So we've got floating wind turbines now, advances in manufacturing that mean we can make bigger blades. We can make sort of several hundred diameter blades now. So so we are using more of it, and yeah, that's going to expand worldwide.
Alex, is the reason that, just from my point of view, is there a reason that we're behind? Is that the investment has been not made in these areas? I mean, why are we so behind in this as a world, not just
I think you're right. It's a good point. It's a lot of it is driven by economics and driven by cost. It's quite cheap to dig up, or has been traditionally quite cheap to dig up these fossil fuels, burn them. It's been quite accessible to nations who have the resources locally. So it's a bit of a bone of contention between kind of developed nations who are saying, "Oh, you should all move away from renewables, from fossil fuels. It's bad," and there's countries that are saying, "Well, we've just started to tap into our massive coal reserves. why should we listen? We've got this cheap energy here, and that's why it's so important that policy drives the investment in these technologies, in this infrastructure, and helps it to expand and helps it to become economical through subsidies. Although wind doesn't generally need subsidies these days to be profitable.
I just want to. Sean has a question about targets. So this is what we want to know as a people, and that's about the target we need to hit to see the effects of climate change reverse, and whether you think that it's not even realistic or possible given the current state that we're in.
So what's the current? I'm quite bad with stats and targets and numbers, but I think it's 2050 to go net zero. Now it is challenging. So as I say, we've got this. I showed some pictures on how much energy we use and how much of it is from fossil fuels. So personally, I think it is realistic that we can achieve these targets, but we have to have a lot of investment in new renewables, new storage, new nuclear, but also carbon capture and sequestration. It's quite an untried and untested market at the minute, and there's a lot of claims being put on it for to save us, essentially, to not overshoot those targets. So my opinion is it's challenging and it's possible, but we need to have the right support.
Phil has given us a suggestion that we fire each other via sort of catapults. As a mode of transport, we need a lot of crash mats, put it that way. I just want to talk about nuclear, because Tony said about nuclear getting a bad press. Obviously, when you mention nuclear power, everyone gets a flashback of that amazing documentary / drama on Chernobyl. It was more of a drama, wasn't it, than a documentary? Yeah. Also, Fukushima happening, within our memory. What is to give a defence for nuclear? Is it always going to be this terrifying thing that could explode at any time, or what?
I think there is, because of the nature of radiation as a hazard that we can't really see. I think that in itself has it instills quite an innate sense of fear for people, and that's completely understandable. Chernobyl was. That there were loads of factors leading up to that. The design itself was flawed. The operation operates under a lot of pressure. Operating instructions were botched. There's so many contributing factors to that going wrong. Yes. That it's hard to imagine anything like that ever happening again. It's that event kick-started the World's Association of Nuclear Operators, which is essentially a governing, regulating body which acts worldwide, and there's local equivalents, so the Office of Nuclear Regulation here.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because I think there's been a lot of accidents in all kinds of industries, from oil leaking in the sea,
absolutely,
for example, to coal mines, 100 years ago even, or I'm sure there's been some recent too, where there were accidents happening of that nature all the time. So it's just a nature of an accident. But I think people have this real fear of nuclear. For example, we would say early on in the pandemic to our family members, if you were told that there was radiation and stay in your house, you would not leave it, because that's how scared you were of it. But actually, people weren't as scared of a virus, and yet there wasn't a lot of difference. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? There seems to be something about radiation specifically that really frightens people.
Yeah, and it's important to, it's not a defence really, but just an interesting comparison is we experience radiation every day from the sun. We get a stronger dose of radiation when we go in a plane, from cosmic radiation. And typically, if I'm spending my day inside the walls of the nuclear reactor in the kind of steam side, because of there's loads of concrete surrounding me and loads of buildings protecting me, I would actually typically have a lower annual dose of radiation from that than I would if I was working in a field or working on a plane. So but yeah, it's so important that we understand what caused these accidents and learn from them. And nuclear does have quite a low accident rate at the minute, quite high safety records. But yeah, if there's ever an event of the scale of Chernobyl or Fukushima, then just from damage to public support of it, it
reputation
probably
goes
would
down.
just die off. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think this is a really interesting question from Susan. So just to let you know, probably about 5 more minutes of questions, and then because this is a massive topic, but
it is.
everyone's feedback. For a start, you're being asked questions that are, I was going to say, above your pay grade, but you're covering a lot of big issues politically, environmentally, and things like that. So I really
Absolutely.
appreciate your vast knowledge on such a lot of subjects, and I just want to say that that's obviously evident. So we're not going to be able to answer every single question, but just a couple more really interesting points that people have made. Susan makes a point which I would also like to get on board with. I watched a documentary. It was a program. I think it was John Oliver Tonight. When he talked about recycling, and he said a lot of industries and companies are making you recycle and saying you need to go and recycle, but actually so much is not recyclable.
Yeah.
And it's almost like wishful thinking that these things. And I think a lot of charity shops recently have also said, stop sending us your rubbish to charity shops. And that's because we are in this fantasy world that we can reduce waste, when actually the best way to reduce waste is not to buy it or use it in the first place. And again, I don't say that politically, but it can look as if, are these things just band-aids? So that's what Susan's saying. Are electric cars just a distraction in investing more in sustainable walk and cycle friendly cities?
Okay, so with that last point, I completely understand that, because what I would say is, yes, absolutely, we should be improving our infrastructure for walking and cycling. I would say for me, getting to my current place of work, which is kind of the way a lot of the world is set up right now, the best thing for me is to electrify my transportation, and ideally share it with someone which I'm looking into, sharing it so that we avoid cars on the road. Ultimately, the right answer is not to replace every car on the road with an electric vehicle. That can't be the right,
exactly.
that can't
And
be
you're
the right
right.
answer.
Particularly in the US, things are built quite a long way away. If you can walk and cycle, great. And obviously, I understand that maybe the infrastructure isn't in always.
Europe has an absolutely amazing infrastructure when it comes to trains, and that they've invested so much in their network. It's kind of embarrassing for us, I think, in terms of the cost of it and the reliability of that network. So that's a bit of a bugbear as well.
Just a couple more then. How environmentally friendly are the lithium batteries that are used not only for electric cars but mobiles, etc., says Drew?
That's a big question. So lithium can be extracted in a number of ways. That there is sort of traditional mining, but we can also extract it from seawater, which I think Joe Kinsella said he was invested in a company in Cornwall that's looking into extracting lithium from seawater. But there are problem materials with lithium-ion batteries and current chemistry. So we all hear a lot about cobalt and other sort of rare earth metals. Cobalt has an issue where some of it historically and probably currently is extracted by sort of slave labor or child labor in the DRC. So the good thing about electric vehicles and the way it's going, and all of these issues being raised, which they have had a tough time getting off, but that's because there's a big industry behind traditional vehicles and all of the fuel processing, and a lot of corruption there in terms of, we want to keep petrol diesel vehicles going as long as possible to make as much money from it, but that's going off into more of the politics. But because there's such a big demand and there are these problems, it's driving innovation in battery tech and moving away from these materials, and potentially moving away from lithium-ion chemistries altogether into there's iron phosphate chemistries which I think are being investigated. Iron is a lot more readily available to us, and also what people don't often realize is cobalt in batteries is recoverable. We can reuse it. So once we've got this supply chain going of new batteries being built, going into life in cars, coming out of those cars and going into probably storage, so home storage or larger storage from those end of life batteries for vehicles, still got 70% capacity.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
And then recycling them afterwards, yeah.
Thank you so much. I do have one final simple question that I would like to leave everybody with, but I would like to just point Adam's point about saying that, and this is about our perception of risk, which it would be great to do an assembly on this. We're not very good at assessing risk. In fact, I think we had Ben talk about this about a year ago. And Adam writes, around 7 million people die every year due to poor air quality, and 5,000 people died because of Fukushima and Chernobyl. So that just gives us, I think it's more of the fear thing, that we have strange fears about things because people don't like the idea of what radiation poisoning is like and how awful it is to die that way. But I do take the point, there's lots of things that we don't worry about that perhaps we should. Do you know what I mean? Like air quality and things like that. Anyway. But I just want to make that point. But very quickly, Alex, to leave here at Sunday Assembly with, this is a big topic. I don't want people thinking, oh, the way of the world. Is there something small that people can do, and what would you recommend?
Oh, gosh. Lift sharing, as I say, walking, cycling is great. It's not always viable to move away from gas at home or to put your own renewables in the house. So it's important to support these where we can, whether it's through investments in schemes. Look up Ripple Energy. That's another good one in terms of investing in parts of a wind farm, but also just the education piece and the kind of lobbying piece and getting into your local MPs and showing that that there is demand for moving away from the current status quo. I think that's probably the biggest thing you can really do on an individual level.
Thank you very much, Alex Hulley. Please go mad and wild for him. Give your appreciation in the chat box as well. He's done a fantastic job here today with a very, very difficult subject. Thank you very much, Alex. Brilliant. Thank you so much. What an amazing guy. And well done to both of our speakers today. The energy. Can we harness Dominic Berry as a renewable energy source, please? We've got the wonderful Dominic Berry. Alex Hulley was fantastic with the information that he shared, and I hope that's helped a little bit. And I really feel as if we have actually gone through our 3 little phrases that go with Sunday Assembly. Wonder more. We have definitely wondered more. Live better. Hopefully this has helped us to live better. And help often. We can do that. Lift sharing, cycling and walking when you can. And also I think climate change can make, because it's so big and it's not all down to the individual, because it can feel very difficult when it's about policy, and we can feel very weighted down by this topic, I know, and it can make people feel very lethargic about it. I know many people here at Sunday Assembly are cycling and things like that, so I'm sure you guys are doing individual things, so I'm not taking away from that. But just to think about, there are things that we can do, and there are people that we can say that we're not happy about this if we wish to, and there are ways, even just small things like Alex mentioned about charging your electric car overnight and things like that are just brilliant things. It is something that we can do, and at the end of the day, and I admit it more than anybody else, consumption. Is that traveling necessary? I see it. Please let this pandemic be for something, please. Minimise travel, says the M60. Do we have to drive everywhere? Do we have to buy that extra cardigan or spend it on plastic that cannot be recycled? That's all I throw to you, and that's just from my personal opinion. It's not a political thing, but, you know, what are we doing individually? It's not all down to you, but I'm sure there's something we can all do. And thank you so much to our speakers. I'm just going to say goodbye to YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.